My name is Catherine, and at 28 years old, I had always been the responsible daughter who stayed close to home while my older sister Melody chased her dreams in the big city. Growing up in a modest suburb outside of Atlanta, I was the one who helped our mother with her diabetes appointments, grocery shopping, and endless medical bills after our father passed away when I was just 16. Melody, 3 years older and infinitely more charming, would breeze into town twice a year with expensive gifts and stories of her glamorous marketing career in Manhattan, playing the role of the successful daughter while I quietly held our family together. Our mother, Patricia, had always favored Melody's ambition over my devotion, and I accepted this reality with the quiet resignation of someone who had learned early that love wasn't always distributed fairly. When our mother was diagnosed with early onset dementia at 62, I was the one who moved back into our childhood home to care for her, taking a pay cut at my accounting job to work part-time so I could manage her medications, doctor visits, and the gradual decline of the woman who had raised us. For 3 years, I watched our mother slip away, piece by piece, holding her hand through the confusion and fear, while Melody sent flowers and made brief visits that she documented extensively on social media, painting herself as the devoted daughter to her thousands of followers. I never complained, never demanded recognition, because I believed that my sacrifice would be understood and appreciated when the time came, that the house our parents had bought in 1985 and where I had invested my heart, time, and financial resources would naturally become mine as compensation for the years I had given up my own life to preserve our mother's dignity. The house itself wasn't worth a fortune, but it represented everything our family had built together, every memory that mattered, and, more practically, it was my home and my financial security since I had never been able to save enough to buy my own place while supporting our mother's care. When our mother passed away, peacefully last spring, I was devastated but also quietly relieved that her suffering was over, and I assumed that Melody and I would work together to settle the estate in a way that honored both my sacrifice and her success. That assumption shattered completely when our mother's lawyer called me into his office 2 weeks after the funeral and informed me that the will had been updated just 8 months earlier, leaving the house entirely to Melody, with a note explaining that since I had been living there rent-free, this arrangement would ensure I could find my own path forward while Melody, being more financially stable, could better handle the property taxes and maintenance. I sat in that sterile office feeling like the ground had opened beneath me, realizing that while I had been changing our mother's bedsheets and managing her medications, Melody had been manipulating a woman whose mind was already compromised, convincing her that I was somehow taking advantage of the situation by living in our family home while providing full-time care. The lawyer, clearly uncomfortable, mentioned that there had been concerns raised about my mental stability and my potential financial motivations for living with our mother, concerns that had been documented in letters Melody had written expressing worry about my isolation and inability to maintain healthy relationships or independent living arrangements. I walked out of that office feeling completely betrayed, not just by Melody but by our mother, who had apparently believed that my devotion was actually manipulation, that my sacrifice was actually selfishness, and that my love was actually greed disguised as care. Within a month, Melody had put the house on the market, hired a company to dispose of our mother's belongings without consulting me, and informed me via text message that I had 30 days to find alternative living arrangements since the new buyers wanted a quick closing. She offered to let me take some of our mother's jewelry as a consolation prize, as if trinkets could replace the home and security she was stealing from me, and when I tried to call her to discuss the situation, she sent me a formal letter from her attorney stating that any further contact would be considered harassment. The house sold for significantly more than expected due to the hot real estate market, netting Melody over $300,000 after expenses, money that she immediately used to buy an expensive loft in Manhattan, while I moved into a cramped studio. apartment and took on a second job to afford rent that was triple what I had been contributing to household expenses while caring for our mother. For months, I fell into a deep depression, questioning everything I had believed about family, loyalty, and fairness, wondering if I really had been delusional to expect any recognition for my sacrifice, and struggling with the possibility that I had wasted 3 crucial years of my life on someone who had never truly valued my devotion. But as the initial shock wore off, it was replaced by something much more powerful and focused, a burning determination to expose the truth and reclaim what was rightfully mine, not through lawyers or family meetings, but through the kind of systematic, patient revenge that would make Melody understand exactly what she had destroyed and what it felt like to lose everything that mattered. I began by doing what I did best: meticulous research and careful planning, spending my evenings and weekends investigating every aspect of Melody's life, from her social media presence to her professional connections, discovering that her glamorous lifestyle was largely funded by credit, and that her marketing agency was struggling significantly due to several high-profile client losses and her own poor financial management. Through careful online investigation and strategic conversations with her former colleagues who I contacted under the pretense of being a potential client, I learned that Melody had been inflating her success for years, that her agency was months behind on rent, and that she had recently been borrowing money from friends to maintain her expensive lifestyle, while desperately searching for new contracts to keep her business afloat. Armed with this information, I crafted a plan that would systematically dismantle the life she had built on lies, while positioning myself to reclaim what she had stolen from me, starting with the one thing that mattered most to her: her carefully curated reputation as a successful, caring daughter and businesswoman. I created several fake social media profiles and began strategically documenting Melody's real story, sharing screenshots of public records showing when she had visited our mother, contrasting her social media posts about being a devoted daughter with the actual timeline of her absence during our mother's illness, and most devastatingly, sharing recordings I had made of our mother during her lucid moments expressing confusion about why Melody was suddenly so concerned about my living arrangements after years of encouraging me to stay close to home. I also began systematically contacting her clients and professional contacts, posing as a concerned business associate and sharing information about her financial difficulties and unprofessional behavior, carefully planting seeds of doubt about her reliability and integrity that would grow over time and cost her the few remaining clients she desperately needed to stay afloat. Within 6 months, her business collapsed completely, her loft was foreclosed upon, and her social media presence became a liability rather than an asset as people who had known our family began sharing their own stories about Melody's selfishness and manipulation, creating a narrative that destroyed her carefully constructed image as the successful sister who had made all the right choices. But my ultimate revenge came when she was forced to move back to Georgia, financially ruined and professionally destroyed, and discovered that I had used the life insurance money our mother had left me to purchase our childhood home from the people she had sold it to. People who were happy to sell to someone with a personal connection and a competitive offer. When Melody called me, crying and desperate, begging me to let her stay in our mother's house temporarily while she rebuilt her life, I had the satisfaction of telling her exactly what she had told me: that she had 30 days to find alternative arrangements. But unlike her, I offered her the jewelry box she had so generously allowed me to take months earlier, suggesting she might want to sell the contents to help with her security deposit on whatever cramped apartment she could afford on her non-existent income. The last time I saw Melody, she was loading her remaining possessions into a borrowed truck while I watched from the window of our mother's bedroom, the same window where I had spent countless hours caring for the woman who had ultimately chosen to believe lies over love, and I felt a deep sense of justice knowing that our mother's house had returned to the daughter who had truly honored her memory, even if she had been too confused and manipulated to recognize that truth while she was alive.